Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom, the podcast for leaders, changemakers, and purpose-driven souls who believe business can be both powerful and human. I'm your host, Demiri, founder of JD Consulting, culture shaper, connection creator, and champion for authentic, connected leadership. Here we go deeper than metrics and meetings. We explore the real stories, raw moments, and bold ideas that shape how we lead and who we become in the process. From workplace culture to conscious strategy, from self-leadership to systems that truly serve, this is where heart meets business. So grab a coffee, take a breath, and join me as we go beyond the boardroom. Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom, Leading with Purpose and Connection. I'm your host, Demiri, and today we're diving into a conversation that feels more urgent than ever. How we prepare humans, not just roles, for the future of work. My guest today is Renata, founder and CEO of MAXME and one of Australia's leading tech and digital transformation executives. With over 3 decades of experience across organizations like Accenture, Telstra, and National Australia Bank, Renata has led hundreds of people through periods of significant change and has seen firsthand where traditional capability models fall short. What makes Renata's work so powerful is that she sits at the intersection of technology and humanity. As AI continues to reshape industries and redefine what work looks like, Renata is deeply focused on closing the growing gap between the skills people have and the skills they need to be effective, confident, and impactful. Today, we'll explore why upskilling in human skills is no longer optional, what work readiness really means in complex, fast-changing environments, the responsibilities leaders, organizations, and individuals share in preparing early to mid-career talent, and why waiting for someone else to invest in your growth is one of the biggest risks of our time. Renata's message is clear and empowering. Don't delay investing in your human skills. It unlocks potential in ways you don't expect. This is a conversation about leadership, adaptability, courage, and the future of work. And I'm so excited to have Renata here. Welcome, Renata.
Hi, Jennifer. So nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. So one of my first questions really is, you've spent decades leading through digital and organizational change. What feels different about the current moment we're in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I have seen quite a lot of tech-driven change. I'm a technologist by education, actually. So I did computer science engineering at Melbourne University and started my career in that way, a bit of a propeller head, I guess you could call me that. And so I've always understood the power of technology. I've always embraced tech change. I am a big supporter of a tech-enabled transformation journey. But one of the things that I feel is different this time is the speed of change. Having seen quite a few waves of sort of tech-led or tech-enabled change, there was still a runway for adoption and there was a runway to make sense of that change and to really, as a human, get used to what it's going to mean for me, right? Because fundamentally, that's what humans are always thinking about. What is this change going to mean for me? And do I like it? Do I want to embrace it or do I want to reject it?
Yeah.
This time around, it feels like AI is everywhere and you, as humans, are sort of being forced, and when I say forced, I don't say that in a bad way, but just very, very quickly, rapid cycles, and just when we think we've got on top of something, it changes again, and it almost feels like it's weekly at the moment. And so it's not that the tech itself is that different. It's probably been around for actually quite a long time, but the sophistication and the change waves and the need for us as humans to make sense of it feels like it's happening much, much faster.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, even when you sort of follow AI trends, which are not even work related, but things like, And I did it for Christmas as well. Like, asked AI to create a photo of me in like a Christmas outfit with a Christmas setup for a photo shoot. And it's getting really, really sophisticated. And I know some people that have used AI for their email signature images, and it's so hard to tell the truth. Like, who is this person? Is it really a photo, or is it AI? And yes, I do agree. It happens faster and faster at the moment.
And just on that, it's interesting. I've done quite a bit of reading over the
Mm,
down period, just around a couple of things. This concept that you
mm,
raised around fake versus real,
yeah.
and that's starting to make people feel more and more anxious
Mm,
because as humans, we like certainty. And when we're uncertain on whether something in front of us is real or not, and we normally probably have a negativity bias anyway because of our sort of wiring for survival. So we're doubly negative about it, and it makes us more cynical, and that gets in the
mm,
way of optimism and positivity, which is not
mm,
great from a productivity and connection point of view. So there's that playing out. But also, what I'm starting to read from a lot of people on LinkedIn, which is where I am a lot, is that these perfectly curated posts all have the same pattern, feel inauthentic, and
mm,
whilst it might be generating lots of clicks and likes, etc., people don't trust the message from the
mm,
message provider,
yeah,
which ultimately is impacting on our personal brand. You know, if
yeah,
people stop trusting you or stop feeling that you're authentic as an author of content or as someone who's sending a message out, because you've used AI to get this perfectly curated, amazing, time saving type of thing, what it's leading to is more of the same. Like, it feels very same, and people are checking out and not reading it and not paying attention. So those are two big themes that I've just in the last few weeks seen really, really come out in the things that I've been reading.
yeah, yeah. And again, I very much agree with you on that. I mean, look, I'm gonna be honest. I on occasion use my friend chat as well to support and just fine tuning the overall message. Yes, is me. However, sometimes there are just like little words that where I'm just like I'm looking for a word and I can't find it. So where I then sort of ask to support with that. However, I would never like let AI completely take over the messaging of anything.
And that's the perfect example. I love that you've raised that. That's actually the perfect example of where I'm very passionate about
Mm,
technology's use because it's making you more productive. So rather
mm,
than going and looking up dictionaries and taking ages and really, you know, kind of spending ages trying to find
mm,
that perfect word, just feed it into there. 30 seconds later, you get the word and you move on. So it's making you more productive because it's taking away the need to spend time working on things that are not productive and giving you back that time to do high value add activities that only you and humans can do. It's the perfect example of that productivity dividend, which is there for the taking at the moment. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. So when we talk about human skills, what are we really referring to and why are they so critical now?
Huh. And look, I love, you know, I brought MAXME to market well before any of this, you know, phenomena of human skills has started to
Yeah.
present itself. But it's so pleasing to start to see kind of it everywhere up in lights and the criticality of these human skills. And there's been a lot of research around, you know, 2/3 of roles are going to be human skill intensive in the next 5 years, and 70% of the skills that humans are going to need in this new world are human
Mm,
skills. But I get asked that question a lot. Oh, okay, like what do you actually mean by that?
mm,
Look, I think the sort of hero of our human skills story is emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence for me is like the mother of all sets of skills. And there's a lot of research being done about the power of emotional intelligence in terms of propelling people's success. You know, it's a very, very big study done by UC Berkeley over 40 years, and they found that people that had high emotional intelligence had a 4x multiplier on success as compared to their counterparts who had a lower emotional intelligence but a higher IQ. So there's a lot of, I guess, goodness that comes from people who are high emotional intelligence. And the suite of skills that sit behind that are things like self-awareness, self-management, empathy, great communication skills, particularly when working with other people, being able to build trust, being able to collaborate, being able to fail fast, creative problem solving, critical thinking. All of that suite of skill set, to me, fundamentally sits under this umbrella called emotional intelligence. And the more we upskill ourselves in those areas, the more emotionally intelligent we become, and then the more successful we become in terms of our impact and productivity.
Yeah. And emotional intelligence is that sort of piece that connects the two of us. Both of us have a really high focus on emotional intelligence, helping people to really lead themselves first before leading others, realizing who they are, how they interact, how that empathy component, all those sort of things. So that's where we definitely have a huge overlap.
Yeah.
And I think building resilience, building that emotional intelligence, building the self awareness is, yes, a foundational skill. So many people call it a soft skill. I consider it a huge foundational skill.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, that's why the suite of skills gets a bad rap because, I mean, who wants to be soft, right? No one wants to be soft. And so I've really moved away from using that term
Yeah.
because it's got a bad reputation. But fundamentally, and it's overwhelmingly researched now by all the big think tanks, that these traditionally soft skills
Yeah.
are the must-have skills for humans to be successful in this new world that we're so rapidly advancing in. And I couldn't be happier because, to be honest with you, I started MAXME after 30 years in corporate roles, and I started it because there was a massive gap in these skills. They were the skills that made or broke sort of people's career advancement and their success and their impact, but it wasn't being taught. And so I really wanted to sort of lean into that in a big way because we need those skills. Like, I don't know, there's no other way to say it. They're missing and we need them for organizations to be successful.
Absolutely. Now, you've touched on MaxMe. So, what is MaxMe? What does it do? Who is it for? Tell me and the listeners all about it.
Yeah, Max, I get asked this, and it's unhelpful when I answer actually, because people go, "Oh, who do you service?" Well, actually, all verticals need the. I mean, if there's a human in your business, they need these human skills. And MaxMe services three core areas of focus. Our favourite time to start is actually with school students that are about to leave the education pathway that they've been on since prep, since the age of 5, all the way through to about the age of 18. And we try and capture them anywhere from about the age of 15 upwards, where we engage in a conversation around how does the working world work. You would be very surprised, or perhaps not surprised, so few young people actually understand the working world.
Mm-hmm.
The very world that some of them leave to go into straight after school. I mean, some kids take the, further education, tertiary education, university, vocational training, whatever. Some kids leave school and go straight to work, and you'd be, astounded how few actually understand the fundamentals of that working world. So we really start there, and we do start to talk about these human skills and these fundamentals, things like, again, self-awareness, healthy working relationships, teams, collaboration, critical problem solving, all of this sort of stuff. So we start in schools, but, the school system is pretty traditional in most countries, and the willingness of educators to go, oh, yeah, we'll just start doing things differently, it's kind of not there. So we're really enjoying the schools that are forward thinking and pioneering and know the kids need this. And we're doing great work in that space. The middle space for us, of course, is that tertiary, further education. And we're doing this globally now in Australia, in India, in the Philippines, soon to be Vietnam, and some of the Middle Eastern countries, is how do we grab a hold of these young people that are between being kids and then starting, they're kind of adults, but they haven't started working yet. And how do we start to really impress upon them and upskill them to because most of them are on journeys where they're really focused on their technical skills, right? They're learning these sort of technical skills, which I'm sorry to say are redundant by the time they get to work, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole here. But what we do is we try and add a complementary learning journey to them. It's not instead of, it's an addition to. We try and give them that really fast pathway to being ready, because the employers are catching them and going, they are so not ready, they are so green, and everybody suffers. The young people suffer and the employers suffer. So we're just trying to give this sort of runway to faster productivity when they get to work. And by the way, we also do faculty upskilling, because it's a nonsense to believe that only the students need to be upskilled. If faculty are the bridge between education and work, well, they need upskilling as well. So we've got faculty upskilling programs. And then the final area, of course, is within the business world, within industry. And we are unashamedly there for individual contributors. We are not interested in being yet another upskilling program for leaders. There's plenty of those in the market, and our strong ethos is 90% of people don't get the right upskilling because they're not leaders. They're in the individual contributor bucket, and they're the ones that make or break productivity on a daily basis in companies. So we are there and turn up for them and their upskilling needs, particularly early to career people.
Yeah. There are a few really interesting points that you mentioned. So the first one, and I made a couple of notes here. So the first one is in regards to the school system, and the school system being really old-fashioned and often not willing to consider MAXME or changing their curriculum to upskill the children to be work ready. And I mean, we can go down a whole rabbit hole here as well. However, isn't it is the school's responsibility to get our children ready for life, for the workforce? Yes, there's also responsibility on parents to support the children and giving them basic skills to also enter the workforce. However, when adults or parents often didn't get that from their parents, then how are they meant to pass it on? It's this whole thing of you don't know what you don't know, where when my parents, for example, if they, for example, didn't have any financial skill sets, any financial literacy, they are unable to teach that to me. So how am I meant to then teach it to someone else? So I think that's where sort of parents and school systems should be working together to get our kids ready for the workplace, for the workforce. And if the parents can't contribute as much as they maybe even want to, having schools also collaborate with someone like you and MAXME to get our kids ready to lead the world in the future.
Yeah, look, Jennifer, and I just recently, I spent quite a bit of time in India, and recently I sat on I guess what you would call a round table around this phenomena. And I raised the nonsense, which is employers are complaining that young people are not ready.
Mm-hmm.
Those employers then wear the parent hat of young people at school. And it's almost like they forget that they're complaining about readiness and don't understand their role on demanding that their kids start the journey towards this education of readiness as early as possible. And when I'm a parent, I'm obsessing about the score that my child gets at school. And let's say in Australia, in Victoria, it's called an ATAR score.
Yeah.
So when I'm the parent wearing the parent hat and my kid is at school, I'm obsessing about them getting this score, this rubbery score, knowing that that score is actually leading them down rote learning and getting a set of skills which are important but not the most fundamental. And then I take the parent hat off and put the employer hat on, and I start complaining that young people don't have the skills that they need. And I just on this sort of roundtable raised the nonsense of that. I just fundamentally there is some sort of breakage in the system where at the same adult wearing two different hats can't reconcile how the two things need to lead into one another. And I just hope 2026 is the year where we can make some parents, with all due respect, I was one of those parents, wake up to the reality. You are paying school fees to schools where schools are in the best way that they can trying to educate your kids to get them through a system. Why aren't you demanding as a parent body that they change the curriculum and modernize it so your kid can be ready and some employer doesn't complain about their readiness? I mean, it really is. It's a phenomenon, Jennifer, like honestly, and it really came up just recently. That's why I sort of raised it with you. But
Yeah,
it's a whole of system challenge. It's
yeah,
pointless to complain and wonder why. You've got to make yourself available to actually get behind the change and
mm,
drive it, right? Encourage it and try and influence it. Definitely. We have a role to play as parents for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I'm not a parent. However, I have a lot of parents in my friendship circle. And again, some have skills in some areas, some have skills in other areas. And yes, that's what they can teach their children, but completely leaving everything to someone else to raise the child and
Absolutely.
teach them things, it's absolutely, in my opinion, a no-go. And as you said, what they're complaining about at work, well, if I have an issue with that at work, then home should be the first place that I look at to make a change.
To make sure my kid isn't
Yeah,
that kid that someone's complaining about. Of course.
exactly.
Of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
yeah. Then another thing that you were talking about is when it comes to the business side of your business and working more with the individual contributors rather than the leaders. I do wholeheartedly agree. There are tons and tons of leadership development courses and pathways for leaders. Some are better than others. Some are very surface level rather than going into the foundational skills that are actually necessary and required. And I agree from experience that very often the individual contributor is not getting the development that they deserve
And
um,
need.
and need. I think, I mean, for example, I always was a great employee. I was a hard worker. And that's what, very often in the past, my employers were really excited about. I'm a hard worker, I'm doing the job, and I'm, doing more than it's asked for. So why give her that upskilling to be a leader, become a leader, if we need someone really great in that workforce space, while she could even excel more in that to create more of her.
No, that's and some employers are like, oh well, she's already a hard worker. She's really good. She's got all the skills that she needs. We won't invest in her. But it's like, what do you mean? Like, as a person, you need that investment. That
Yeah,
investment, and again, it's this sort of, why would I give my discretionary effort and keep giving if I don't feel like there's anything coming back?
yeah,
And I say this to some of my clients, it is not the right mindset, or it's a short-sighted mindset to
yeah,
think, oh, well, they're already good, so they don't need the upskilling.
yeah,
Everybody needs this upskilling. Everybody wants to feel like someone is investing in them and cares about them and is listening to them and is getting behind them and their
yeah,
progress. And these sort of human skill areas, I mean, no one's ever kind of done. There's
yeah,
always areas to continue to deepen. So it is that perfect place to
yeah,
sort of get individual contributors to sit in and to work on themselves through. Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely.
So while we're on that topic, you are very passionate about upskilling early, which is great. So
I
what
am.
gaps are you seeing most often? What are the gaps that sort of, if you would sort of say the top three or top five gaps, what are they?
Well, I can tell you hot off the press, we talk to a lot of employers and we do a lot of market research, or at least listening posts, because we want to make sure that our products are
Mm,
going to get people to competence and confidence. The largest by far that employers are telling us is lacking is self-awareness, definitely,
mm,
is this sort of holistic ownership of how I'm showing up.
Mm.
There's a lot of finger pointing. It's somebody else's fault. It's this one. It's that one. These situations don't suit me. The circumstances aren't right. Yada yada. But actually, there is little ownership and even understanding of what that even means to be more self-aware. So that's a huge area of gap that we're hearing pretty much across the board from employers.
Yeah.
Definitely connection and communication. So importantly, from a communication point of view, is just the ability to talk. And when I say talk, not just talk, but also influence and have your voice heard, particularly from some of our young folk who probably aren't sure what to say or when to say it. They haven't had that sort of 5 days a week in the workplace. There's been a lot of hybrid working. They haven't had a lot of human to human interaction. They're on their devices anyway, so this sort of face-to-face conversations, they're out of touch from that. And also linked to communication are two sort of, I guess, complementary things, which is the ability to listen, actively listen, and also the ability to have difficult conversations, not just communicate, but really challenge and brainstorm and have difficult conversations. So that's definitely being reported as missing. And then this sort of, critical thinking, really challenging, rather than just kind of generating something and throwing it over the fence or just trying to get it off your desk as quickly as possible, sitting in complexity and really working through the critical detail behind something. Does it pass the sniff test? Would I say this to someone's face versus, saying it over an email or over a text message, etc. That is also really missing, which is then contributing to things like the inability to put people in front of clients. So if you think about most businesses, I'm trying to make revenue either through a product or a service. If I'm a service-based business and my people can't do these things that I just described, their ability to give a customer, a consumer, a great experience, which then leads to share of wallet, it's really diminished and challenged. And so these things, these lack of these skills are having real impact on the bottom line and productivity within businesses. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. There's so much in that. And I've done a podcast episode before about the good old participation medal. And I think there is a component of that going back to that, where at one point we just wanted to make sure that everyone feels included rather than actually letting people use their competitive skills and learn how to fail, and learn how to critical think, or learn how to, okay, on this occasion I failed, what could have I done differently to do better next time? I think with that, a lot of that was taken away. A lot of those things are missing because we are also, I believe, living in a society at the moment where we don't want to offend anyone. We don't really want to say what we think out of, fear that we're offending anyone, and no one is really standing up for anything anymore. I think that has a lot to do with that. And please correct me if you think I'm wrong, or and I'm open to a conversation about that. And but I think that is sort of the trigger that led into the way it currently is. In the past, I believe there was just too much of this hierarchical and commanding type of leadership and parenting. And I think it's gone too much the other way.
I completely, wholeheartedly agree with you. And a couple of things I wanted to unpack. First of all, this concept of inclusion at all costs, it's actually very dangerous to productivity because, to your point, inclusion in itself is so diverse teams, when harnessed and people feeling psychologically safe and included to be their full self, actually research-wise leads to innovation, productivity, just amazing things happening. But groupthink inclusion, which is sort of what plays out, because fundamentally humans are pack animals. We will do whatever it takes to belong.
Yeah.
So if we are given a culture where belonging is open and diverse and fully inclusive, full self-inclusive, that's amazing. If belonging means if I stand out or speak out and I'm going to get cancelled or I'm going to get rejected, there's no chance I'm going to do that. I'm going to do whatever it takes to belong and to fit in within the culture that I've been given. And that's non-innovative, that's energy draining, all of that sort of stuff. So nuanced is where we are with diversity and inclusion. They're not just letters, they're not acronyms, they're not things that you hang on walls. They're things that you need to truly bring to life in ways that either help to build that high-performing culture or actually really fundamentally lead to a very toxic, non-innovative culture. So I think that's the nuance of that is really important for organizations to grasp and to try and bring to life. But unfortunately, because we don't have the fundamental capability in place around that in most organizations, I'm happy to be on the record to say that, it's very difficult to really bring that to life. The second thing I think, which is really important, is this fear of getting it wrong. So one of the biggest barriers to good communication is this fear of saying the wrong thing or made to feel bad about the way I think, and this kind of, again, cancel culture of, oh gosh, if I say that, who am I going to annoy? And, is that the wrong thing to say? Is that politically? And we're so bringing ourselves into knots around that our choice is not to say anything. I'm not going to say anything, or I'm just going to let that through, or I'm going to pretend I agree, which is, again, very toxic to the productivity and the innovation that most organizations want to bring about. So these are very, very important things that are either going to make or break great work environments and therefore productivity and outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does work ready actually mean in today's complex workplaces?
Yeah, and it's such a good question because, I inevitably ask the question that I always know the answer to, but I don't like to have confirmation bias, although I probably have some of this. I ask people, how ready were you for work when you first started based on what you picked up in your university degree? So how much of it did you use? How ready were you? Now, we've done a lot of research and 75% of people told us they were not ready, but I asked the question anyway, and most people inevitably come up with, oh yeah, I may have used about 10% of what I learnt, maybe 15% week one, month one, year one of work. So work ready is not whatever we're churning out straight out of education pathways. Sorry, no disrespect, but that is not work readiness. And employers are saying that. 93% of employers are saying, young people are not coming out of the school system, whatever that is, the elongated one, the shorter one, whatever, work ready. So very much it's really around a couple of things for us. Again, back to that emotional intelligence is my maximum readiness to come and learn. That is the only thing that you need to really have when you enter into any new job, not just your first job, is the acknowledgement that you don't know that environment, you don't know the people, you probably don't know the subject matter, even though you might be an expert in your JD. Every organization is quite different, it's nuanced. So it's first and foremost the neuroplasticity around I'm open, I have a growth mindset, and I know that I don't have all the answers, but I should just come in with very, curiosity and lots of questions, ready to learn, ready to fail fast, ready to sort of ask questions, etc. Secondly, I'm ready to work with other people. I understand that the workplace in its complexity means that I'm very unlikely to be able to work on my own and solve complex problems on my own, which inevitably means I'm going to have to work with other people in the workplace. Now, with the current workplace with 4 generations in it, that means that I'm going to have to work with people immediately that are not my age, not my background, very diverse, and I'm going to have to be ready for all of the nuances that come with those people. And again, be open and curious, want to know about them, want to build trust and rapport with them, be humble, all of those sorts of things. So that, that sort of muscle around not having all the answers, having lots of questions, but bringing a little bit of confidence, not like falling to pieces, because nobody's employed you to do that, and being really ready to make connections and build trust and rapport with other people. Like, that's the number one basis of any working relationship. If you try and accelerate through that and not do the work, you're not going to get the results. So just the willingness to do that, and just that, finally, that resilience that you talked about before, that willingness to recover from setbacks. I'm not seeking perfection. I'm not expected to be perfect. I'm not going to put that heavy load on myself to have all the answers and be perfect. I just want to come and learn. If I make a mistake, I'll apologize, I'll ask for feedback, all those sorts of things. So those are kind of the critical things for us that reflect work readiness for any work environment, but particularly when you're first starting out.
I want to thank you for bringing up this thing about not only your first workplace, but all the other workplaces that you go to. They are all different. The environment is different, the people are different, and so on. So even if you're a subject matter expert or an expert as per your JD, coming into a new workplace is always like your first day. And I feel that's where a lot of employers drop the ball, because they are not creating onboarding programs that support that new employee to come in. While, let's say, for example, I have been a business development manager for company A. If I go to company B as a business development manager, just because I've done the role before does not mean that it works exactly the same. So yes, sometimes expectations of the employer, I believe, are different when you've done a role somewhere else before that is at least not, like, let's say 90% similar. And that's where the onboarding falls short a lot of the time.
And I think the patience from the employer, to your point, to allow that person to acclimatize. So, that sort of concept of less haste, more speed. If I give the person the right kind of onboarding, embedment experience, and I give them, the support and the confidence that they can get to know the environment, we make ourselves available to them and support their, their acclimatization, that over the, kind of short, medium and long term, they're just going to be better off and more productive for the organization. And I think that's where a lot of employees also fall short. Like, I put too much pressure on myself because I'm this subject matter expert and I've been employed for my greatness. And now I have to, like, prove myself from day one. So I come in all bravado and all ego and, I know what I'm doing here and I've seen this all before. And then before you know it, you've annoyed everybody that you're working with and you come across as a big douchebag. So, the whole system just needs to take a deep breath and give the space for humans to just come, acclimatize, and really become the best version of themselves with that psychological safety, to then go, okay, I've got this, I feel like I can move forward, and the space has been given for that. That's super important, because otherwise it's pretty ugly and gets ugly pretty quickly. Yeah.
Also, to the point of work readiness and sort of using things that you've learned at university in your actual workplace. I think, especially Australia, but also I think America, and I'm not 100% sure on that, it's this whole thing, you come out of school and go to university and learn things, and then you go into the workplace. Now, what I believe Germany actually does really well is their apprenticeship program. So the apprenticeship is a bit different to what Australia is, and then there are some components that are very similar. So it is really a conjunction of working in a business as well as having that educational piece all parallel. So there's sort of two different ways. It's either 2 or 3 days of school, and then 2.5 days of school, and then 2.5 days of being in a workplace, or it's sort of like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So the off weeks in the job, you are in school, and vice versa. So where it really goes hand in hand. And they actually do that for pretty much all jobs. So the only thing that you would really go to university for is like doctor's degrees or lawyer, things like that. So like really, let's say
Or
when
where you're going
you,
to kill someone if you start working without the skill. Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
exactly. But for example, marketing jobs or other sort
Commerce.
of
Right. Same
even
thing.
accounting, that sort of stuff, you actually do it parallel, hand in hand, school and, the practical work at the same time. So you get real life tapping your toe into the job and also having that educational piece, and you can merge it together rather than losing or wasting time on one thing, and you actually learn what you need
Yeah,
as
no,
well.
and I think so. A couple of things on that. I participated for a number of years. I was the human skill partner for an organisation called the Digital Skills Organisation,
Mm.
which was government backed at the time. It's now called the Future Skills Organisation, so it sort of morphed into one of these jobs and skills families. Anyway, long story short, we ran a pilot in Canberra, and we ran exactly what you've just described, which was a
Mm.
boot camp model where we sort of took people, and it was for cyber. And so we took people and we ran them through a pretty intense, I think it was a 9-week program to really get them up the curve to entry point, sort of analyst level. And then they went to work, and we embedded exactly what you've described, a just in time micro credential type of approach where they worked for 4 days and one day they went and did learning, and then they came back and applied. And
Mm.
that's sort of the ethos that MAXME has as well in the programs that we run. We follow the 70-20-10 model,
Mm.
which 70% of our learning is done through doing, 20% through coaching and mentoring, and 10% through training.
Yeah.
And so it's that model worked really, really well in this pilot. And through a period of 3 months, there was just this marked difference in the quality and readiness of these people in these jobs versus someone who goes and learns cyber at university for 3 years, 2 years, whatever. And then by the time they get to the workplace, the stuff they've learned is irrelevant. It's actually not relevant anymore because the market has moved on.
Mm.
So I'm all for that model. I love the trainee apprenticeship model that we have in Australia for the trades.
Yeah.
It works really well. I mean, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, they go and they learn with someone who mentors and sort of guides them, and then they go to TAFE,
Yeah.
and then they learn the skills that they need offline, and then they come and they apply it and they learn and they learn. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's the learning of the future because it makes it, like you said, for those you're going to kill someone type of jobs. Now, you would argue that carpenters and
Yeah.
plumbers and electricians, you can, I guess, I mean, probably kill yourself in the first instance,
Yeah.
but I think that there's something in it. And the work that I do in India, we've got a growing footprint in India. India is starting to really come
Mm.
around to this technical skill or technical training, apprenticeships,
Mm.
traineeships. They're really interested in learning from places
Yeah.
like Germany, Australia, etc. That's getting a lot of airplay at the
Mm.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So, how can leaders create more environments where human skills are valued, practiced, and rewarded?
Yeah, it's such a tough, such a tough question because, like, I wish I could say to you that people are just having epiphanies and going, "Of course, we need to do this." Unfortunately, it's not happening, particularly not in Australia. So
Mm.
you still find yourself talking into a void, even though all the research backs it up, even though people know that AI adoption is low and people are struggling and transformation is failing.
Yeah.
And we all know that, all the research is saying it's because people that put people at the center of all of this are 2.6 times more likely to be successful. But it's all like blah, 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 because fundamentally we're not making those choices to lean in and get our people up the curve. I think the first thing is just commit to doing it. Like, I mean, move away from, oh, yeah, I know this in theory, and commit to doing it and make the time and space for it. Oh, we don't have time, we're sort of up against it. back to less haste, more speed. If you create the space and you let your people lean in and you get them energized and connected and upskilled, they will be part of the solution. All you need to do is just wind them up, get them going, and get out of the way. They'll do the work for you. It's so crazy. I can't believe we're still decades into why does transformation fails. We're still having this fundamental debate. And then don't expect miracles from it. Like, this is not a once and it's done thing. Oh, I've upskilled my people. They're done. They're fixed. Why isn't it working? Because this is actually a journey, right? And as much as I hate using that word and people roll their eyes and it's a cliche, we are up for a future in the next couple of
Mm.
decades of unlearning, relearning, unlearning, relearning. And remember 70-20-10, the 20% relies on the leader making it their business to help their staff be successful. And, Simon Sinek, he has this great quote, which I love, which is leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Your role as a leader is to create more leadership around you, not to be the almighty on the pulpit having all the answers. Actually, as a servant leader, you're there to enable your staff to be the best version of themselves, and then magic happens. So let's just lean in and bring that to life as well. Really, not just in the books and, oh, I've read another management book and, oh, that's such great theory. And then when I get through the working doors, goes back to the way it's always been. I think it's really just time to start showing up in a different way, because it's starting to get a bit boring, this, oh, what should I do? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to what you were mentioning earlier, is that employers complain that the employees don't have enough self-awareness. Do the employers sometimes have enough self-awareness to create the change, to make the workplace a place where people actually want to learn and want to engage and want to move forward as well?
Absolutely. And you don't have to have all the answers. There's this leadership burden of, I'm the person that's at the top of the tree, so everyone's looking at me and I expect me to have all the answers. No, they don't. It's okay to say, I don't know, what do you think? I'm the same human just like you. This is what I think. What do you think? You don't have to have all the answers. It's okay to have more questions than answers. And in fact, it's the way we should be. That curiosity, that innovation requires you to suspend what you know and be ready to be wrong. And so I think it's so important, that mindset, that self-awareness, that we're in it together. Let's do this together. I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to grapple with life's biggest issues on my own. How do I bring my team in? How do I make them part of it? But it's not just inviting them in. You got to get behind them. You got to invest in them. They got to feel like they're important to you, not just, come on in, guys, let's do this together. Okay, and what's in it for me? That's a fair enough question. It's not enough to go, oh, I'm paying you a salary. The what's in it for me? What's the discretionary effort? How do you make me want to keep showing up and be excited to be here? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's also something when it comes to learning a skill, being work ready, is how do I actually interview the company if they are a right fit for me? It's good and well that they've invited me for an interview to want to make sure that I fit into their business, but do I actually want to be part of their business? So I think there's also a lot of lack of teaching kids out of school or out of university the ability to interview back. The amount of times that I've interviewed people and then at the end asked, do you have any questions for me? And the amount of times I just heard, no, not really, or just really basic questions, which in a way did, in my opinion, did not help them make an informed decision. I think that is so crucial to teach them that as well.
I agree with you. And it's sort of, as any employer should want to know, does that person really want to work here? You've spent so much time getting to this, the kind of edge of the triangle or the wedge where you're making a decision on who you're going to hire. You really want that person to be so gung-ho and so passionate about working there and wanting to come and show up and be the best version of themselves. If there's a mismatch, and in life, there's going to be that. Like, not every environment suits every person. How do you
Yeah.
get to that perfect I guess, chemistry between the human and the workplace. Everyone should be going through a process, not just from the employer to the employee, the other way around. And how do you give people the confidence to say it's okay to ask those questions? And in fact, it's seen as a positive thing that in the interview you're seen as someone who's really critically thinking about what are the things that are going to be successful, not just in the job, but also for me to come and be the best version of myself. How do we teach people to ask those questions and to be confident about it and authentic about it? That is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how early should individuals really start developing the human skills, and what's the risk of waiting?
So look, you really touched on it so beautifully before, Jennifer. I think as adults, we need to start to have these conversations with young people as early as possible to start to really help them understand what are the critical success factors to them being the best version of themselves in life, in their relationships, in their working life, etc. What are the things that they are going to need? And if they're not getting them through the more traditional pathways, how do we as adults create the space for them to lean in and to do that? And I think that's really important. It's interesting, in India, parents have a lot more of a hold over their kids much longer than in Australia. I find that really interesting, where if I turned around to my child sort of in year 12 and said, you're going to do that skills boot camp, they would have gone, no, we're not. Whereas in India, if the kids are told by their parents, you're going to do that skills boot camp, normally they're showing up to that boot camp. So that's just an interesting difference of culture. But I do think the adults in the room do need to take responsibility and be a bit more heavy-handed and influential around this knowledge and making it really clear what's important and what's not just when they're wearing the employer hat, when they're wearing the parent hat or the guardian hat or the uncle and auntie hat, whatever. And then I think really importantly to take that through life, to continue. It's not a set and forget once and done type of thing. It's how do I continue? How do I really grasp this knowledge that I'm a work in progress? Doesn't matter where I am in my life, I'm never fully finished. And what does it look like to continue to stretch myself and grow myself and really continue to be curious about that? Not do it because it's a box ticking exercise or I have to, but actually because I fundamentally understand it's part of me having a good life. It's like, health. Most of us understand that a good diet and exercise, it's part and parcel of living a long, healthy life. We don't really challenge that anymore. All of the modern science and all the information around us, we all accept that and we know that. I mean, it's still a choice, but we know that if we choose an unhealthy pathway, we're going to have health problems. A healthier pathway, more likely to be successful. This is exactly the same thing. If we want to have a really successful work pathway, we're going to have to accept that there's a certain set of skills that are going to be required, and we're going to have to continue to live that way and grow in that way and challenge ourselves in that way. It might be harder work than not doing it, and we have the choice. But ultimately, if we want to be successful, we've got to keep going with it and keep stretching ourselves and keep being curious.
Yeah, yeah. And following that, why do you believe so many people delay investing in their growth, even when they know change is coming or, in general?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, it's because we're not actually taught from a young age that these are must-have skills, right? All of the sort of markers and symbols in our pathways are the technical skills, the things, the maths, the English, the science, the coding, the this, the that, whatever, that they're the skills that are critical to success. Very few of us are really talking about until recently, but that takes a wave of change, right? You have to hear it again and again and again to go, okay, I really need to be paying attention to this. That's the first thing. The second thing is fundamentally humans are avoiders of work. We prefer to stay in our comfort zone. We prefer to stay with what we know. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Humans don't like uncertainty or areas where they're not clear or not confident. That makes us feel anxious, and our survival mechanism is triggered, our stress response, etc. So we prefer to be comfortable in our comfort zone, stay with what we know, and that sort of gives us security. So actually facing into the fact that I need to keep developing, I might not be fully fledged, whilst 80% of our time is spent thinking about the stuff we're not good at, very few humans actually master turning that into strengths. It's very rare and it takes a lot of effort. So
Mm.
we like to overthink and, really sort of think about the stuff that we suck at and how we're going to make ourselves better. And this New Year's resolution, or I'm really, really going to start that diet on Monday. But then we just inevitably don't end up,
Yeah.
driving that change. So it's really, the small bite size. How do you stay within just outside the comfort zone, in the learning zone, but not quite in the terror zone, because that sort of makes me shrivel up again. So again, it's the system needs to change to give us those exposures and that upskilling pathways available. And then it's the human and the people around them, encouraging them, supporting them, championing them, mentoring them, whatever.
Yeah. And yes, I can see that a lot. I've actively started having coaches myself when I started my business. So I've regularly been working with coaches, and sometimes with more than one at a time, um, in different areas of my life to complement each other. And so many people were saying to me, why are you wasting your money on this? You could like go on a holiday with this, or you could do this or that. And I'm like, I don't see it as an expense. I see it as an investment in myself, in my future, and my growth. And 99% of the time, I get double to tenfold back what I put in.
And again, it's sort of, people are so quick to give you their views on things. And it's like, thank you for your point of view. And, you don't need to do this. I completely understand. Enjoy that Fiji holiday. But I'm investing in myself and I've got a vision for myself and where I want to head. And it's sort of this, self-help. It's an interesting space, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, what? You're not broken, or are you broken? Why are you doing this? Well, actually, no, I'm not broken at all, but I want to improve the one percenters, right? I want to get myself to the best possible, version of myself so that I can outperform. I don't know, some people really struggle. And again, I think it might be that sort of negativity bias that we're wired with. Something's got to be wrong for us to do
Yeah.
something. There's a little bit of that playing out. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic. I think anyone who puts good people around them, that really challenges them and knows how to ask them the right questions and to elicit, get out of you all of the goodness that's in you, which is what a good coach does. They don't tell you, they take you through a pathway that actually, unearths what's already inside you. I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it made me a better coach as well, because I adapted some of the questions as well and now asking them to my clients. Um, yeah, I think it just really challenges the thinking and how I do things and helps with the critical thinking. It's like a workout in the gym when it comes to critical thinking. I always call my coach my PT for business or PT for life, or whatever it may be, because they just stimulate an area of my brain that is normally not stimulated, and therefore I get better outcomes in the long run.
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
really nice way to describe it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what mindset shift? I mean, we sort of touched on it, but what mindset shifts need to happen for people to move from fear to ownership of their development?
Yeah, and normally fear comes from loss. So interestingly, I've done quite a lot of research in this space. Humans don't fear change. Oh, just like XYZ is change resistant. They're not actually change resistant. We're evolutionary beings, so we know we need to change and evolve. We're kind of just used to that over millions of years or whatever. But what we fear and why we reject change often is because we fear the loss associated with that change, and therefore our natural instinct is to survive, and therefore we reject the change.
Mm.
Now, interestingly, the mindset does need to change in terms of just being open to the fact that you don't know. And I read something very recently which I thought was so powerful, which is the power of presence.
Yeah.
And people talked about the past, the present, and the future. This article that I read,
Mm.
and over focusing on the past leads to this overthinking and really losing confidence, and ultimately might lead to depression. Focusing on the future, the unknown, causes, overthinking, and then, not doing anything because I get, really stuck on, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And that can lead to over anxiety. So the
Mm.
true space of effectiveness is the present, where I have a set of circumstances right now, right here, right now. What can I do about it? How can I respond to what's in front of me? It's the only thing I truly know. What's in the past has already happened. What's in the future, I don't know. All I know is what's right now. What am I going to do? And how can I most effectively address it and be the best version of myself for this thing that I need to show up that's happening right now? And this concept, which I thought was really powerful, is I trust my future self to get me through whatever's going to happen. Because guess what? I'm alive. I've got here somehow all the way through the past challenges. It's okay. I've navigated it really well. I've got myself here somehow. So I trust that my future self, doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to get myself through whatever challenges come. So I'm not going to overthink that. I'm just going to be present and deal with whatever's happening right now in the best way that I can. And that was such an epiphany for me. I don't know why. I've done coaching for so long. I've done this, upskilling for so long. But that podcast that I listened to was like, oh my God, that is so powerful. And the only way that I can be the best version of myself in the present moment and deal with the situation as best as I can is if I upskill myself to that highest potential self, to that highest potential state. And that's all I can control. Getting myself match fit, the best possible me I can be, so that whatever hits at whatever time in that moment, I'm going to deal with it the best way I can. And I think that was really powerful.
Yeah, it absolutely is really powerful. And one thing that I want to add to that is, isn't that also a learned behavior to overthink and be so fearful in situations? Because when I look at children, they just run off and do their thing and then trust that whatever happens, happens. But the older we get and the more, I guess, influence from parents or the people surrounding us when it comes to fear, when it comes to, oh my God, this could happen, so maybe be careful, that sort of starts this whole challenge with overthinking, anxiety, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And this freezing, because interestingly, here's a statistic for you: 93% of 3 to 5 year olds ask why and engage in creative play to learn. 2% by the time you get to 18 and older. And it's for a number of reasons. One, because again, that fear of failure, fear of being rejected, fear of being cancelled, fear of getting it wrong, fear of loss, all of that status and credibility, etc., etc. We build this persona, this version of ourselves that we then start to protect so deeply, and therefore our willingness to creatively ask questions, be a bit weird, like whatever it is, it's diminished because we have to maintain that persona to belong and not be rejected. And so it so gets in the way of the creative process, innovation and learning and betterment, etc. It's rippling for people that they're overthinking it and they just want to be perfect and not get anything wrong, because fundamentally we want to belong, we want people to like us, and we don't want to be rejected. It's really complex, and it plays out every single day in such, in really challenging ways.
Absolutely. Now, how did your shift from corporate leadership into entrepreneurship change the way you see human potential?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think I was always on the path to entrepreneurship, but I didn't know it. So I'm a migrant. I was born in the Ukraine. My parents migrated here with, quintessential 2 suitcases, no money, little kid. That literally was their story. And my family are a family of small business owners, of entrepreneurs. Like very, very few of my family have ever worked in corporate or anything like that. But I think, my parents sort of, they wanted me to be educated, and then I did okay at school, and then was like, okay, I want you to go to university, which they did go to university. In the Ukraine, education was very important. So my parents went to university. And then it was like, okay, I did quite well at university and Accenture offered me a job, so I'm just going to take that job. Like, it just was the pathway I took. But I grew up around entrepreneurs. And so it was kind of in my blood anyway. Now, I would describe myself as a workaholic, and I developed that over 30 years in corporate roles. I started at Accenture, so of course I was always going to, be a hard worker and perhaps
Yeah.
even an overachiever, let's put it that way. But I've always worked really, really hard. But I say to people all the time, in the last 6 years of running my own business, I have never worked harder in my career. Like, it is relentless.
Yeah.
Because it's my, and look, not that corporate wasn't my passion. I've always been passionate about people in particular, and I've found myself in amazing multinational jobs where I got to work with the most incredible humans and build them up and, set them on their way. So it was incredibly rewarding work, but I've never been as passionate as the vision that I have for what MAXME is going to achieve, particularly in this area of cultural change and upskilling and, different workplaces. So to bring that to life, you have to put your whole self into it, everything. And so it's a never sort of 24/7, never ending challenge or opportunity, and so you're always thinking about more ways of doing more and bringing more and talking to more people and getting the message out. I can definitely say when it's your own and it's your passion and it's your vision, then you've got to put everything into it. As I said, I was always a workaholic. I always loved my teams. I always loved what I did, and I always worked really hard. Very, very different feeling that I have now. I'm not sure if that described it accurately, but it's that full self, that whole, every single cell of my being is in this and wanting it to be successful and wanting to drive change.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And it definitely explains entrepreneurship really, really well. So, yes, you can be a workaholic in your 9 to 5. I think when you have your own business, it's like a whole different level of workaholic. However, it also feels very different. It like a 20-hour day doesn't feel like a 20-hour day when it's your own.
In fact, there are never enough hours in the day, and I'm always going, oh my God, I didn't get to this person and I needed to have this conversation. And I used to do that at work as well, but it didn't feel as personal. I don't know. It was always like, oh, okay, it'll be there tomorrow, type of thing. Whereas, I'm constant because I'm driving impact. And I really feel like I really felt very hamstrung in a lot of the organizations that I was in, to be completely brutally honest, and always held back, actually. Be less of that, Ren. Like, that's too much, kind of come back tomorrow, relax. Yeah. And I didn't want to relax, right? So now I'm sort of, driving this thing that's my own, and you have to drive yourself through lots and lots of lows. Yeah. So many lows, and so many things don't go your way, and so many people don't respond in the way that you think they're going to respond, and people who you thought were really close colleagues won't even pick up the phone and talk to you when you really need them most. That really bites. That hurts. But you have to pick yourself up from those lows, and you've got to keep going, and you've got to be relentless about it. And that's been a big change, a big difference.
Yeah. And I think lows are actually the thing a lot of business owners don't talk enough about, in my opinion. I think everything is so curated online. So many businesses look successful that may not be as successful yet, or as successful as they want to be. And they're just too scared to talk about the lows because they're afraid, we're coming back to the fear component, that maybe a future client may not work with them because just maybe there's a low period at the moment. They don't believe that they're good at what they're doing, or things like that. I mean, there are other low things as well. But
you're 100% right.
That is one of those things.
And it's a big challenge in Australia in particular. India's much better at this, but big business working with small business, we've got a long way to go. Like, there's all of this sort of talk about, we want to help small business and we want to innovate. But when it comes down to it, big business is not interested in innovating, and they don't want to take the risks. so as a small business owner, you want everyone to think that everything is so amazing and you've got all your, your stuff together, because you don't want them to think it's a big risk for them to do work with you. And so there's this need to sort of continue to show up in a way that's not really reality, and it's exhausting. I speak to so many people and I'm like, how do you keep up with that sort of,
Yeah.
kind of that facade, because it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. We are coming to the end. I really, really enjoyed our time together. But I definitely want to ask you, if listeners take one action away from this episode to either upskill or learn, develop, what should it be? What should they do?
First and foremost, take these human skills seriously. Like, they don't just happen by osmosis. They can be taught. I get asked that all the time. Oh, how can you teach empathy? Absolutely, you can teach it. They are acquired skills. As Jennifer, as you pointed out, self-help doesn't mean you're broken. Self-help means you want to get ahead and have the edge. And let me tell you, the edge is really hard to attain, and there's a lot of competitive, competition out there at the moment. Do it. Get behind it. Get out there, find a program, find a group, start upskilling. And you're not going to find it on YouTube. So many people, I'll just go watch some YouTube videos. I mean, statistically, that's not really going to change much for you. So get behind it, invest in yourself, take one less weekend away to Torquay or wherever, and spend that money on yourself to upskill yourself, get yourself, up the curve, because it will start to give you more and more the competitive edge in a really complex working world now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And is there anything that we haven't talked about that you actually really want the listeners to know?
And I just think, I think it's really, entrepreneurship can be very lonely. One of the things that I've really enjoyed, Jennifer, about our conversations, it was that, let's do a podcast together, but how can we work together? Like, what are the opportunities to create a 1+1 = 3 outcome that, collectively what we offer is so much more powerful than, say, what we do separately. And because entrepreneurship and small business and making it and all that sort of stuff is so lonely,
Mm.
find your people. Like, really get out of the busy, raise your head like the meerkat and find your people and give yourself that sort of that energy boost and that confidence. Surround yourself with good people, do more together. I just think it's really empowering. Maybe 2026 needs to be that year where we slow down to speed up and we just find our people and start doing great things together for others.
Yeah, I agree. I think collaboration is just so important and essential. And like the little synchronicities where, there's strength on one end and strength on the other, and how that can just elevate both. I think that is often so underestimated.
And I think, a lot of us are like, oh, there are competition. No, no, there's no such thing. There's way more people in the world than we'll ever get to. And, even in organizations, I find the blockers in oh, no, we don't have the capacity for this. Oh, we're doing this already. No, you're not. So what are you really afraid of? Why are you blocking, the sort of people that can come in and help you to accelerate what you're trying to achieve? What are you afraid of? It's like, get out of your own way. So I just think there's more opportunity for that, because the problem or the opportunity is very large, way larger than any individual or even organization can comprehend and address. So there is a big opportunity, I think, for us to look broader than what we're thinking about now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you spending the last hour and a bit with me. I'm really looking forward to the release of this episode. I think there will be a lot of food for thought for people, and I'm looking forward to actually meet you in person at one point
Yay.
when I come over. So yeah, thank
Amazing,
you
amazing. Here's
so
to a
much.
big 2026, Jennifer, right? Here's to a big 2026 to you, to me, and to our clients and to our listeners. Yeah, amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and we speak soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. See you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Beyond the Boardroom. I'm truly grateful to have you here. So if today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone who'd find it valuable. Your support helps us spread the message of purposeful, connected leadership even further. So until next time, take care, stay curious, and lead with heart.